Very good. It's 1 o'clock, so we'll begin our meeting. It's a combined meeting, so I want to thank everybody for being here. We kind of have a full schedule, so we're going to do our best. Each presentation is scheduled for 15 minutes, and so we'll try to, if people have questions, if they have a little extra time, we'll do that, but otherwise we'll try to stay on schedule. I apologize for scheduling it that way, but that's just kind of a way for all of us to combine our efforts. So thank you everybody for being here. And Jim, if you want to get us started just with an introduction, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Pepcorn. What I wanted to just talk about is a couple pieces of information that we had talked about at the last meeting, but one of the things I wanted to talk about a little bit is the process and really the criteria that you'll be using to select them was what we went over at the last meeting, and I'll get the hard copy of that to you, but that's the criteria that we'll use to make recommendations. Now, whether or not someone gets incentives, that will be sort of a secondary review later. And so if it's a Renaissance zone application, the Renaissance zone would act on that in the future. If it's TIF, it would be a recommendation from the Economic Development Incentives Committee. So I think it's important once we get to where we can make a recommendation, that would still be contingent on whatever incentives they've asked for. In some cases, there may be some planning and zoning issues, such as the site, the school warehouse that's in a flood zone where an exception would be required. Just there'd be some performance requirements, and there could be some other contingencies. So when we do get to the point where you can make a recommendation, and maybe that'll be in a week, maybe that'll be at another follow-up meeting. I just want you to know that we won't have everything pinned down once you make that initial recommendation. There'll still be some follow-up on that. So we can get this up on the overhead. One of the things I had sent out to you was just in response to some questions on housing demand. Almost all of these have a housing component. And so while I don't have a market study to tell us what housing demand is going to be, that's something we're working on in a housing study. I thought it was interesting to see what the trend has been in the city of Fargo, both downtown and non-downtown for apartments. And you look at the bottom there, that's average 6-year average has been 700 apartments permitted in the city of Fargo, and just under 200 permitted in the downtown. I've been more in the downtown in the last 6 years than I've been in previous years. But so I don't know if that's necessarily so shows for sure what future market is, but certainly there's a trend there of more apartments being needed in the community. I also include just some information on what transit costs are. It is $40 a month for a monthly parking pass. The other thing I just wanted to talk about, there's been a couple emails I know on affordable housing, and I want to point out that as part of these three proposals for these three sites are all kind of part of a larger riverfront plan that does include some affordable housing in the future. So when these plans and projects go into place, there will eventually be tax increment financing money. And the three sites identified in the riverfront development plan, one was the Housing Authority's Burrell Colonial building, so that could be redeveloped in the future. The Housing Authority owns that site. Secondly, possibly helping with the Lashkowitz redevelopment, that high rise. There's still some funding gaps there they're trying to solve. And then we've had discussions when we were preparing the plan, and that have continued, that as Prairie St. John's is redeveloped, there's going to be some vacant property down here that is potential for affordable housing sites. I know Beyond Shelter is already in discussions with them on that. So while some of these projects don't include affordable housing, they will provide resources into the future to allow us to make some affordable housing investments in the downtown. So just wanted to make sure you're aware of that, kind of the big picture and what we're trying to accomplish here. What we'll do now is I guess if there are no questions for me, we'll move ahead to the presentations. We'll have the developers speak from the podium on that side. I believe they have presentations loaded. We have the handouts, at least for the first site, the 1 2nd Street site. You have some hard copies in front of you. We've allowed 15 minutes for a presentation, and then whatever time you feel is necessary for follow-up questions. So if there's no questions for me, I think we'll move ahead with Eagle Ridge. John?
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come talk in front of you guys. I'm John Eunice with Eagle Ridge. I handed out a pass. There's a handout for you guys to kind of look at as we go through this. Kind of want to give you a little bit of history about us. We're a local Fargo-based developer, full-service real estate development company. Everything from, and you've seen us before, whether it's raw ground, building neighborhoods, all the way through intense mixed-use developments. Some of the projects that we've recently completed or are working on include a downtown project in downtown Bismarck, 56 units, a 196-unit apartment and mixed-use building in West Fargo, the Northern Lights. And we also have our Eagle Ridge Plaza, which we're midway through construction on. That's a $200 million project on Veterans Boulevard south of 32nd Avenue. So, I give that as a little bit of history to show you that we've got the capabilities of being able to do this size of project. It's not outside of our wheelhouse. One thing when you take a step back and as we reviewed when Jim sent out the RFPs, we looked at, is there a unique opportunity for us to do something in downtown Fargo? We haven't done anything in downtown Fargo before, but we've been interested, and we've been, as RFPs have come through, we've been watching and waiting for the right one to show up. And 2nd Street, on the Main Avenue site, when this showed up, we looked at this as a unique opportunity to provide a unique building for that corner. I think we can all agree that it's not a traditional lot. It's got a unique shape. So when you look at going and figuring out what the highest and best use of this property, sometimes you got to work with the shape of the lot. And there's also access restrictions that also kind of force us into something. So what we ended up coming up with is approximately a $35 million project. It's a mixed-use office, retail, and condo project with underground and main floor parking. It's got a 3-story office building on the corner by the roundabout. There's some retail on the main floor, and then again the 57 units, which are a combination of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom options. In addition to that, along with those 57 condos, it's going to be a high amenity building. We're planning a couple of rooftop patios, a fitness room, a club room, and then also some additional storage. As we went in and we were planning this project, we also wanted to be cognizant of the fact that we got to make sure we park our site appropriately. And that's why you see the combo of underground and main floor parking, trying to make sure that we are providing enough parking not only for the residents, but also for these businesses that are going to be operating there. And even taking a further step back, when you drive by the site, what great visibility this thing has. When you're crossing the Main Avenue Bridge, you look directly at this site. And so we felt like we needed to come up with a project that took advantage of that visibility and really gave an opportunity for a business to come in and have a marquee corner on a highly visible corner in downtown Fargo. I mean, there's over 30,000 vehicles a day that go around that roundabout. So it's got tremendous amount of traffic. When you look at the different proposals, we feel like we're presenting the highest and best use for this property. We also are offering the most money for this piece of property. So when you look down the road over the course of the next 20 years and factor in the Renaissance Zone benefit that we're asking, we're talking almost a $3 million difference in taxes. There's a lot of good that can come from that, whether that's going back into the downtown fund to help out on other sites or just general operations. So again, I just wanted to point these things out. I wanted to open it up because I'm sure you guys have some questions on this thing, but I wanted to give you a brief overview on why we did what we did. And the last thing I want to touch on is, from an aesthetic standpoint, we really wanted to play into the historic architecture of downtown Fargo, utilizing a lot of brick that ties in, that's going to have a look that'll last for the next 100 years. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions you guys may have.
If you don't mind, I'll start. Can I ask you a question? So it's mixed use, obviously. So looking at the picture, is the main floor commercial? Is that the vision of what it will be? And then will those be tenants, or will they own the property, or what will that makeup be?
Yeah, so good question. The main floor will be virtually 100% retail and office along Main Avenue. As you step further back, into the building, that's where we're using the main floor for some parking and for some storage options. 2/3 of the building have underground parking associated with it, but we intentionally left off underground parking on the far west side of the building, and that's just for constructability purposes. We can't put a big underground parking everywhere on the entire site. It makes it impossible for cranes to reach to get materials up. So we intentionally left a portion of that out so that we could come back in and do that portion at the very end and still have access all the way around the building during the construction process.
Great, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions about any of the particulars? I'll give you get extra credit for finishing well before your 15 minutes, so that's, I don't know if that applies, but I guess from my perspective, like you said, it is more square footage, and then is all the rest of the all the residents are going to be condos?
Yep.
Is that what's proposed?
Yep, we are presenting 100% a condo building. This is not going to be a rental. It's not going to be a mix of rentals and condos. This is 100% for sale. You briefly asked a question on the office and retail. We haven't closed the door on any options, whether it's someone comes in and decides that they want to rent from us, or potentially condoing out that retail space. I mean, this property is located in an opportunity zone, so there's some advantages for businesses there, and it's also in a Renaissance zone. So again, there's some advantages for businesses potentially owning these spaces as well.
Just one more for me. Do you have like a ballpark range of what those condos, what the sales prices will be approximately?
Yeah, right now we're saying somewhere between $295,000 up to somewhere around $850,000 for the top floor condos.
Very good. Any other questions from anybody in the group? I apologize for monopolizing the microphone, but the mayor's used to that.
Dave,
Anybody? Go ahead, Deb.
Could you
Sorry.
just go through the use again?
Yep,
I'd kind of like to
absolutely.
jot down. So I've got the main floor with the
Yep,
retail and office storage parking.
So we've got we have a 3-story office building that will have its own dedicated parking within the building that's on the northeast corner. There is a single-story retail, and that's about 13,000 square feet of office space. There's a single story and option for a 2-story with a mezzanine retail on the west side of the building, and that can get up to about 8,500 square feet. There's going to be an entry on the main floor on Main Avenue as well that's going to be common area for the condos, that's going to have the elevator and your mail rooms and those types of things. And then as you go up, like I said, second floor, there's an option for some mezzanine retail on the west side of the building. 3 stories of office, and then it's all residential, everything above that. And there'll be we're planning a rooftop patio for the residential, both on the Main Avenue side and on the river side. And again, when we laid this property out, we thought, how can we maximize? This was a much bigger lot that obviously had to get gobbled up for levies. It's also connected to trails. To us, it just seemed like an ideal spot for a residential mixed-use building.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I have a question for Jim. So Jim, we are not going to be taking action today. This is basically presentations from everybody, or can you review how that's going to go?
Be primarily presentations today. The third proposal for this site was not able to be here, so it's only fair we wait for them and to present on the 25th. And then the last proposal the MBA proposal won't be here. So there's probably only one site that we would be able to make a recommendation on. I do want to say, though, it's probably important that we get recommendations to the City Commission and in the first part of February, because if they're going to hire architects and get going, they need to know, which one's going to get selected.
So if I can ask one more question. So if somebody has another question that comes up before we take action, should we send them to you and then you can be kind of the clearinghouse?
Yeah,
Or
please send the questions to me, so if we need to do some research or reach back to the developer for more information.
So
please do
everybody
that.
here, and including the people, there's some people that couldn't be here today, and so if you can't be here, and you come up with some questions, and if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to have that be dispersed to everybody, just so we can see what the responses were, and if that's okay, we'll have Jim be the clearinghouse, and then you can answer them, and then we can all see the answers, if that's okay with everyone.
And
Any
we
other
do
questions?
have,
Okay, go ahead, Jim.
Reed from the Renaissance Zone Authority is on virtually, so we do have everyone here right now, so that's great.
Yeah.
Could you give us just a quick rundown on your timeline, when you would anticipate construction beginning and ending?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of it's going to be predicated on how long it takes for decisions to get made with the city, get under contract. We do have a due diligence that we'd like, no different than any other site. We're by the river. We got to make sure the soils are suitable for what we want to build. That takes a little bit of time. We would assuming we were awarded the property, we would immediately start work on the design, including the geotech reports and structural analysis to make sure that the building will work on the site. Our intent would be to break ground in the fall of this year, assuming we can make it through the process, get the property situated and designed appropriately.
Very good. Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll move forward. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
You bet.
Appreciate it.
We'll
So
invite
now-
representatives from Epic then to come and provide their presentation.
Will you pull up what we
Hello. We have a slideshow to pull up, right? I believe.
Are you able to control it from over there?
Can you do it right there?
We will get the technologists to help you as quickly as possible. We apologize for that. And the city commission and the mayor will not be assisting with any technology because that is not, there it is.
We got it.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Todd Burning. I'm president of Epic Companies. We're just going to go through a PowerPoint. You have the exact same thing in front of you and a note sheet as well to take notes on about this project. And I'll go through as fast as I can. I don't think I'll get extra credit for finishing early, but I'll do the best I can. You're looking at a rendering of the building that we call Unite. That's what we're proposing to put on this site. We'll get into some more detail about it. This would be the third building of our four-building master plan of this neighborhood, better known as the Gateway area. And as we go through, we'll discuss more about the project, but that's what you're looking at. That is the building that we're proposing to put there. Quick about us, Epic. For those of you that don't know us, we're definitely not the biggest development company, but we're real proud of what we've accomplished and what we do. Our mission is enhancing communities through innovative development, and I think we'll tie all that back. We do have some very core values that I think are very applicable to urban design, and that's to be able to evolve and adapt, build relationships. In urban areas, there's not only the city, but there's parks and downtown community groups, etc. Lots of people make it downtown, and we recognize that. Very open communication. We have lots of different ways, probably more than others, from people that specialize in art and events and etc. I think it's very, very important. And our motto, change your thoughts, change your world. And we have some different thoughts on this piece of land. And I think it could change the world for downtown Fargo and adjoining areas. And we remain very humble at what we do. We're proud of what we do, but we just let the people speak for it themselves. We are small, but we do have the capability. We have over 25 mixed-use buildings. We add about 7 a year. Our commercial square footage is over 350,000 and probably add about 100 to 120,000 of that per year, and we're over 1,000 units today. So big enough size to handle anything, but we take it one day at a time. This is the core team. Below this team is about 60 other people. And we're all here today. This is very, very important, being building number 3 of our proposed master development. So a lot of effort into this, and obviously we've been working on this for 4 or 5 years because we've got one building up and another one coming up, and it's just hopefully a continuation of what we can show the community and go from there. We'll talk a little bit about our experience. This slide says a lot, and it's the lights. Many of you have been there, maybe some of you have not. It's creating an urban development in a suburban area. And just kind of taking around clockwise, top left, that's our community video board, and we have one on our building at Gateway now, and access to really any nonprofit or anybody that wants to put messages up there, and we also use it to develop revenue for our spaces, and I think that's a very important piece. To the right, we did get the Governor's Choice Award for this development. This is a pretty current picture. It shows the NHL rink in between the buildings, the big stage, the public parking ramp, and our third building under construction. This complex is targeted at workforce and has some condos as well. They kind of help pay the bills for the workforce people. And we think that's really important. We'll talk about how that works on this site. Tina Fisk has a real good quote there. I invite you to read that. Basically she let us help with community amenities, and as she deals with her community that has robust growth right now. And art is a big part of what we do. You're gonna hear more about that. Bottom left, can't see it very well, but when we said we're gonna put about a half a dozen Pixar, 14-foot Pixar lights around the building and let artists do them, that's what we did. We are very big in the arts, and you'll hear more about that in a little bit. And then Landon Solberg, it's community. We're all about community and community spaces and making it a destination. And I think a lot of you know about him. He's a little boy that died of cancer, and his parents have created a really nice foundation to help other parents dealing with people in a similar situation. And we've dedicated part of our space to that and let them use our plaza for community events as well. This is where we started, and it's downtown West Fargo, and I know a lot of Fargo. Where is downtown West Fargo? It was not much there when we got there, and we thought they were crazy, and we thought we were crazy, but we went forward with it. But this has a lot of ties to what we're proposing to do. We have 3 buildings up right now. We have space for a couple more, and we're just kind of working through the street project through the Main Street Initiative, which we got awarded that as well from the governor. So we have 2 awards in urban design from the governor's office, and this is the second one. But the POW MIA Plaza, when we did this with the city, we said, look, we'll put $300,000 towards this, and we'll work together and create a community space that the neighborhood can embrace, and that's what that is. And we wrote out the check, and we got it done. The whole project was about $1 million, and the VFW put a piece in, and the city put a piece in, and we have a nice community space that can be used by that neighborhood and kind of a focus of West Fargo's downtown. This is one going on in Grand Forks. The tie to this is a little different. The mayor came to the lights and said, Todd, we need one of these. Grand Forks is educating doctors and lawyers and all kinds of accountants and professionals, and we're sending them right down the street or over to Minneapolis or everywhere else, and we need some quality of life things. And so they hired us to do that, and that's what we're doing. If you used to go to Muddy River or Townhouse, it's gone. We have buildings under construction. The plaza starts this summer. And really, the bottom right quote, Blue Weber, I've never heard of Alexander, but Blue is what he goes by. He leads the Downtown Development Association and just thrilled to have us. And we're complementing what they manage already. They have some public spaces, and so it's really working together and complementing each other and working in unison. And he welcomed us with open arms and just figuring out how we all fit together. And yeah, so it's a Grand Forks project we're working on in downtown. Moorhead, Dan Molly and his crew, at the location across from the iconic Dairy Queen is the top left building. We were asked probably 4 or 5 years ago to do that, and we fit the building on there the best we could, working with Eventide, who is the main tenant. They actually own their space, and starting to help develop. Kevin Bartram and that team develop around Moorhead, and then to the right is Vinay. We opened that up last year, and residential is completely full, and that was really targeted at workforce housing, and that worked out really, really well. And we have some tenants on the main floor, and then the green space behind it, kind of waiting for a junkyard and what's going to happen in that parking lot next to it, but there is dedicated community space there as well. Just a real quick, we do small communities, Perham. There's a quote from the Economic Development Director, lots of moving pieces together to make this work. Minnesota's a little different, it has a little bit more variables, but a lot of good things, especially this building is all about workforce. As you know, Perham has more jobs than it has people that live there. And so they're doing whatever they can, and this is right on the main drag, and there'll be community infrastructure and stuff with this building as well. Last one of just kind of an update of projects we do. Minot, if you've ever been there, you know the Big M building. It's been vacant for 20 some years. But this is a little different, and it ties to what's going on around the country, and that's converting office space into living. And we're doing that. The mayor and Harold, the new city manager there, asked me to take a look at it, and we're going through that process, and we'll start on that this summer, and it'll have a couple floors of condos, 5 floors of apartments, and some commercial on the bottom. So I'm just kind of giving you a flavor of what we do. We are downtown people. We work with downtown groups. We have complete respect for the arts and culture, and that's your core. That's, you raise your kids to get comfortable with your core. Well, that's the same as a community, and we like to be a piece of that. Our experience, just kind of summing that up, we know community, we know public spaces, and we want to be a part of the downtown. We've already put $50 million behind what we want to do. I think it's really, really important to understand that 3 or 4 years ago, when you had RFPs and you threw them all away, it was right around $500,000 that you're being offered, and that was going straight to the diversion. Well, today, you're lucky. It's great. You've tripled your money. You should all be investment brokers, because now it's $1.5 million we're looking at. And I think you'll maybe like the way we're going to split apart what we're offering, but the value's gone way up. And that's because right to the west of it's $50 million of buildings and a master plan. And we are really thankful that we had Dennis Olson, the guy that owned that space, work with us and help us get to what it is. He's been a long-time believer in Fargo. All right, here's the space. Let's get to it. The gateway is the one that's up. That was our first one, just to kind of stabilize the area. The arch is coming right behind it. That's a $35 million project. The two together are a little bit over $50 million. And we'd really like to be given the okay to do Unite. And we named it that because it really ties everything together. And we'll show you some site plans that do that, but not only the site and the downtown, but also to Moorhead and working together with our community right across the river. I think it's really, really important. Our fourth building is we're working with the husband and wife that have the Cenex gas station and working through that. At some point they want to retire and they really like what we're doing, and we've met with them, and so we'll work together on that. And we own the Northern Plains Surgery Center, and there's some good opportunity at that corner and finish that off. And so to us, it's all about master planning, parking, and everything, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But culture is a huge, huge deal, and we'll have some fun with that here in a minute. And just an opportunity for everybody, from people that own condos all the way down to workforce. And of course, our new neighbors to the south will be the Fargo Housing Authority and their complex. And we've designed the arch to fit in within that. with their 5-story structure. And so it really could be a neighborhood for all walks of life. And I think that's what downtown is. I lived in downtown Fargo for a couple of years. I have a place in downtown Orlando for the last 6 years. That's what makes it work, no doubt about it. Our plan is a building very similar to the gateway that's open where the frying pan is, but a little bit bigger, a little bit taller. And but we know it fits. We're ready to roll. 7 stories, 37 apartments, 30 condos. And so it's a real balance. Second floor is going to be parking. So we'll have underground parking and we'll have second floor parking. And the second floor is also going to be indoor community event space. That parking lot, that parking garage, for lack of a better term, 15,000 square feet of it, will be equipped with power, bathrooms, lights, sound, so we can continue to do events like we did this year, and we'll get into that a little bit. So we're going to allocate some public amenity dollars, and that stays with the community, and then the payment of the land stays with the community. It goes to the flood diversion, but we kind of broke that apart here, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But that's our plan. That's our building. You can see on the right side the green space, and we have some ideas for that, and that's where we would put $400,000 towards. Here's the connectivity. If we can continue on with our master plan, the pink shows some connectivity, and Confluence has helped us with this, and they're really good to work with and take in the information that comes through your guys' information, and that's the 2030 plan and the In Focus plan. But you can see how everything connects. Everything connects. Accessibility is not just on Main Avenue. It's a couple times on Main Avenue and then all the way over to 4th Street. And long-term thinking, I think that's really, really important. And really, you guys get a great opportunity to say, okay, what are we going to do with this land that's going to impact everybody? Not just the developer, but the community long-term. And that's really, that's what we do. And anyway, that speaks for itself. Integration, shared services with the whole master plan is very, very important. There's the names of the buildings on there and kind of gives you perspective. The community plaza, bottom left, is kind of a winter scene. The top right is more of a summer scene and doing some things with art and stuff. And this is an idea. And we'll do this ourselves. If nobody else wants to get involved with it, that's what we do. You can go to our website, Epic Events. Or we'd love to do it with, if it's a downtown association or Fargo Parks, as we're going to be working with Fargo Parks on Eola and some other things. And so we're very open to that, of taking this space, even if it needs to be dedicated back. We don't have a problem with that, and we'll put $400,000 towards it. We're very, very open, as we are in every community that we talk about things like this. Embracing the river, I know that's a big one, and yep, we all remember when it gets mad, but we all got to learn to live with it and enjoy it and embrace it in the greenways, and that's what communities along the rivers are doing, and we'd definitely be a big part of that with our public space and our indoor event space. And the size of this building lends itself to that too. We don't always think that the bigger building is better. We think it needs to fit. It's easy for me to come in and say, I'll build this big building there and take that. But I really want to balance things, and I want to understand what you guys want. And we spend time on the 2030 and the In Focus, and we need to make that work and check off some boxes and complement the Broadway Square and what could potentially happen at the steel site. And on top of that, we allocate annual money to it. We have about 50,000 square feet of commercial total. So that'd be about $50,000 a year. We cam $1. We do that everywhere we go. Our commercial tenants love it because they get to have more activity right outside their front door and a mechanism to help fund that. Those are some things. I put Fargo Park District on here because they could be a natural to help with that as they help with downtown and the Downtown Association as well. And we really want to embrace the river and just be one of those pieces along the river of entertainment and things to do in the summer and winter as part of a destination. Something for everyone. Workforce housing, huge. I've owned Spicy Pie since Spicy Pie was started, and everybody working for me is worried about where they're going to live in downtown, and that's workforce housing. Some of them qualify for affordable housing, some don't, and so I think that's really, really important. I'm continuing to develop green spaces, and green's a general term, but it could be more concrete than green. And connectability and working within the river environment. I think that's very, very important. Art, I put this in here. Matt is here. Meet Matt. He's been a long time downtown artist. He teaches art downtown. He's murals on the buildings that are coming from him. He's on our payroll, and we are a big part in art. We love art, and we're like artists. We kind of just go at it at our own and work within the guidelines we can, and we really want to continue to do more art downtown. The top right is the really important one of the big picture. Sorry, Matt, you're number 2. But no, that's his art show. We've done 2 years of art shows. We did one in West Fargo and one in Fargo at Gateway before we opened. We worked with the city to get a occupancy deal, temporary deal. But the second floor will really lend to that on an annual basis, and other events as well. In really downtown Fargo is where it needs to be. That's where the culture is. That's where artists live. A lot of them flip pizza for me. And we just need to make that work. So that's part of that.
Just one more minute, please.
Yep. Okay. And summing it up, growth as a neighborhood, talked about that. Prosper as a business center. It's huge to have everybody in the downtown. Destination, you want people to talk about, let's go to downtown Fargo that don't live here. Complete our streets, Main Avenue, we really love the narrowing of that. Park smart, yep, we can meet the qualifications and exceed that. We don't want oceans of parking, but we can make that work, and we've demonstrated that. And play with a purpose in the whole area. I think it's important. The Go 2030 plan, we check off a lot of boxes there. I'm not going to read that to you, but the biggest word on there is community, and we definitely do that. Our evaluation, our net benefit is $1.588 million. We've divided it a little up. 1.188 would go for the land and the diversion. The other $400,000 would be how you guys see fit to make this space work. I think that's really, really important. Our project value is not the highest, but it fits, it makes sense. And we have over $100 million of investment in this. And I think everything else you can read yourself, other than make sure you understand that we're going to put $50,000 a year into that, whether we do that with you guys or alone. That's up to Jim and the city and everybody else. It's our last slide, I think. Cohesiveness, big, really big. Embracing the nearby beauty of the river and its amenities, we need to do that. We have absolutely no contingencies. We have no 180-day waiting period. We've studied it. We know this site very, very well. We know it works within the Diversion Authority. The public amenity, top right, some money stays with the city, the $400,000, and the payment of land obviously goes on to help the diversion. And the bottom right is just tying it all back together, enhancing communities through innovative development. I think that's really important. That's it. Thank you. I know I didn't get extra credit, but I appreciate your time. Really
That was a very good presentation. And so if you don't mind, I'll start out with the questions, just a quick one. So the park, is your concept that this, so like, I guess I go by the Broadway park, that's a kind of a combination of the downtown and the park district. Is that vision, that's something that you're open to?
Very much so.
So is the vision, like right now, it looks like there's water there too. What, or is that kind of open to further discussion?
We could put water. We showed a couple different ways. Bottom left, we show water. Top right, we don't. And so what we're saying is we're very open. We're open on who owns the land at the end, what the amenities are, who maintains it. We are committing $400,000 to develop it. We're committing $50,000 a year to program it. Everything else is absolutely wide open, just like how Broadway Square was, whether we end up owning it or somebody else.
So basically, like the programming, that's something that, I mean, you're willing to participate in, but that could also be a different entity or something like that. That's just
absolutely.
But you've made a financial commitment to it.
Yeah, it's like the lights. West Fargo Events oversees it, and different people have different events in there, and the city owns it. But we also have Epic Events that brings the concerts and other stuff there as well. Okay. You bet. Very open to that.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's about a 1 acre site, so it's got some size.
Right. Any other comments or questions? Yes.
You're proposing 67 units, and out of that, how many of them are condos? And
30. I don't want to transpose. We have 30 and 37. I believe it's 30 condos and 37 apartments, or it might be vice versa. But the apartments are smaller apartments directed towards more entry-level type rents, and then the condos are on the top floors. We basically look at condos as a way of helping subsidize all the amenities and everything else that can go on there. That's why we don't have it all condos, because it's like, there's no end game. Our end game is to help support workforce housing. I think it's very, very important.
Thanks, Prakash. Go ahead.
One more question. In downtown, incorporating green space is a challenge. I know you're planning on doing that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
About green spaces? Yeah, well, next to the dike, we have a lot of respect and with the diversion and what they've got to do. And like I said, we've been working on this site for 4 years or whatever it is, a long period of time. And so right along the dike is kind of a natural place to not put a structure. It gives some flexibility with the dike system itself. And whether it's a green space and it's more grass, or if it's turf, or if it's a mixture thereof with concrete or pavers, we're willing to do that and be a part of that design as much as you'd like. We're pretty successful at it in other urban areas, and we can make it work, no question about it.
Commissioner Preston.
So a couple of questions. First of all, can you clarify for me again, you kind of ran past it fast, is the parking, is the first level parking?
No, ma'am. Underground is parking.
Okay.
And second story is parking. Main level is commercial.
Okay.
So we have a parking lot in the back of the building, which would be the south side. We have underground parking, and we have second floor parking. And just as you would have street fair, you'd say, all right, everybody off Broadway, or the Bison Parade's coming through, everybody off Broadway, you're gonna have to scramble for a day and a half. We'd be the same way to our tenants, our housing tenants that live on this, that use the second floor for parking. Say, okay, not Friday and Saturday this weekend, we're gonna be part of the big July event, or we're gonna do this or that. So that's part of the fun of living in a place like that.
So my second question is related to workforce housing.
Yeah.
You mentioned very briefly entry-level housing.
Yep.
And they're scaled down kind of apartments. Can you give me a sense of pricing strategy?
Sure. What we do is, so we look at the whole block. And Fargo Housing Authority, when they get that figured out, which they're getting closer to, they're going to have the different levels of affordable housing. And so what we do is our apartment mix, and we study a lot of what everybody else is doing downtown. But we have smaller apartment units, and they're not really less in amenities or anything like that. They're just a smaller footprint, so they could come in anywhere from $750 to $850. We just kind of make it work within the model, and it's really at the support of the guys that are on the top floor. They're helping pay the bill.
So can I ask about the condo prices?
Sure.
What those, just a ballpark of those as well?
Yeah, ours are very similar to what our competitor said, and whether they start in that 300 range, maybe 275, 325. We're not going down to the second floor because those are going to be apartments. So I would say ours are probably more in the 325 range, and then end up at that 750, 850. It's based on square footage. I mean, you never know. A guy can walk in and say, no, I want two of them, and combine them, and now you might have 1.2 million. So it depends on square footage.
Any other comments, John?
Could you remind us of the agreement with the Diversion Authority on the sales price and how that was shared?
Yeah, the city will need to get permission from the Diversion Authority for this particular sale price. So, they're certainly going to be aware of the two different offers. The city owns the property, and so the Diversion Authority really can't make us sell it, but we can't sell it without their permission. So there needs to be some agreement that we come to.
Okay, and the agreement to share the 400,000, would that be something negotiated actually with the Diversion Authority?
Yeah, that'll have to be negotiated with the Diversion Authority. You would have to convince the Diversion Authority to take the 1.1 million and as payment for the land.
Seems like a great plan. That we don't have to sell the property, but they have to approve it.
Right.
We're trying to figure out how to get it to work so that there's something left other than just in the flood diversion, but whatever, we can make it work, whatever way.
All right, thank you.
One more question? Go ahead.
Yeah, one question again for Jim. So, remind me, the property that surrounds this, is there a dike there?
Yes, there's
Okay.
a levee between this property and the river. I don't know if
Okay.
we can go back to one of the site images. So you see this, you kind of see that kind of brown area that runs where there's nothing.
Right
That's
there.
all owned by the city and would continue to be owned by the city.
Okay.
It'd be a flood protection. So that, I can't get the pointer to work, but
Very good. Any other questions? Otherwise, thank you very much for the
All
presentation.
right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on.
we'll move on to the second site. This is the former school district warehouse site located at 419 3rd Street North. Megan's passing out 2 hard copies, one from Authentic Housing, the other from Kilborn Group. We'll have Authentic Housing go first on their proposal. I think they'd sent out some supplementary information. I forwarded that to you, and I'll just let them present their offer. It's not a specific dollar amount. It's to be determined later in terms of the price. And again, we would have to get the Diversion Authority to agree to that type of an arrangement. So,
So, Mr. Chairman,
everyone,
Can we, just before we start, can we let Arlette has to
yeah.
make a statement?
I need to notify and declare a conflict of interest here, but there's 2 ways to do this. One of the proposals, my husband and I have a small investment in the fund that owns part of the property that will be worked into the proposal. So there's 2 ways that this can be handled. I could outright just say, conflict of interest, I'm done with conversation and voting and back myself out, or have the committee determine whether it's significant. I think the language is substantial conflict, or substantial benefit, I think is the actual terminology. So, can I leave it up to the chairman to decide which approach?
I don't know if you should leave it up to the chairman, but I guess, I think for everybody,
Yeah, and I
I
can
guess
maybe-
I'd be interested in your perspective.
yeah, I can clarify further. The proposal from Kilborn Group would be to use the property that the city has, as well as property that DFI owns. This development group would be buying both pieces, and so now that the piece that DFI owns is for sale anyway, and so at some point it's going to be, sold and developed by a different party, and so certainly Commissioner Preston owns a small interest in that piece of property that's going to be sold one way or the other, but
Right.
might be sold to this Kilborn Group. Is that, just trying to
And-
clarify what our.
Yeah,
what
if
was
I could
explained.
just say something a little bit more. As an elected official, I've always been very clear and careful about making sure that I vote on most everything. So that's why I'm putting it forward and not pulling myself out, because it is, in my mind, a smaller kind of investment in this particular property. But I'm also very careful about transparency, so I want that out on the table, and I would prefer that the committee decides.
So I guess that's why the chairman gets to pass it on to the committee, because that's my prerogative. But I do think the flip side of it is she can add good conversation. She has a good perspective, as everybody in the group does. And so from my perspective, I think she should be included, but that's just my opinion. Does anybody else have any
I'm in
any
agreement
feelings?
there.
Mr.
Go ahead,
Chairman,
Deb.
Your conversation is helpful in many cases, Arlette, so I think you should be part of the conversation.
Yep.
Whether you abstain from a vote, that can be figured in future.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, John.
Love to kick it right back to the city commission, but this group is going to make recommendation. And Commissioner Preston, I think, you'd have very good insight. Downtown resident and all your time invested in development.
Agreed.
You are not able to, with your single vote, sway the decision in any manner and then kick it back to the city commission. You'll have to decide that when it's a vote on the recommendation from this group. So
That's good comments. Any other comments? Do we need to have a vote on it, or I guess from my feeling, I think the group is in favor of you participating. So unless we have any objections, I think we'll proceed that way, if that's okay.
Okay.
Any other?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, go ahead. No, we apologize for that. This will not be subtracted from your time, so go ahead and introduce yourselves and away we go.
Yeah, absolutely, no worries, and thank you. I think that gave us some clarity on what's going on as well. So, hello everyone. We are Authentic Housing, a public benefit corporation. Our mouse isn't working.
Sorry.
Can we use this mouse?
No, it's fine.
Oh, no.
Oh, that's a bummer.
She did.
Okay, there's an alternate.
I guess now we'll be taking up our own time. I think Enter should be able to work. Okay, perfect. All right, apology about that glitch. So we are a public benefit corporation. So this means a few things. The first is that it means that we're a private entity that puts creating public benefit on equal footing with returns. And it also means that we'll be paying property taxes just as any other real estate developer. And as we wrote in our proposal, we are very flexible and want to meet the city and the citizens' needs equally. And we also wrote in our proposal that good design is not only an outcome, but definitely a process. And the same can be true with the partnership with the communities that we serve, including the city. So we will bring you back to this point if there's ever a concern with our proposal, and we are flexible, and so in our financing as well. And this flexibility allows us to create a very affordable workforce housing with the community at the forefront and the city as well. So if there's ever a concern, please feel free to revisit. This is our team. Everyone is here today. So our team is deeply connected to Fargo and the state of North Dakota. 3 of 5 of our founders were born, grew up, and have worked here. Tyrone himself was a former city planner here. So we're very excited at the opportunity to be back home in Fargo. And our team has many years of development experience. We've worked on 8 projects that are similar to our proposal, myself included, in both the state of New York and Columbus, Ohio. We have been certified by the state of North Dakota, the state of New York, and the city of New York as qualified. And we've reached out to the Fargo Housing and Redevelopment Authority, and they said that they're willing to partner with anyone who's doing affordable housing. And so we will seek to create a partnership with them to utilize their Fargo-specific experience. So this is this slide above right here shows some of the comparison of our quality standards versus the standard code, which is most of the buildings that have been proposed here. And so one example of our quality is that the air inside of our building through passive house design will be cleaner than the outside air. So whether it's a normal day or when we get hit with the annual smoke from the Canadian and West Coast fires, our residents can safely retreat into their homes, knowing that the air will be clean and that they won't smell smoke or have any of that interference. Also, our standards use up to 90% less energy, which means that less money is leaving the local economy. So this is one of the reasons why our rent is 20% cheaper than the median rent in Fargo, and that we are far more affordable than the typical rents that you see in downtown Fargo. So here we have a basic comparison of our rents. So the chart above shows that the Fargo median rents and our rents with the standard utility cost, we removed that as a comparison in this chart here. But we are far more affordable at every unit size, and our rents are about 20% less, again, as I said earlier, than the median rents in Fargo. And our downtown rents that we have in our proposal will be definitely a lot cheaper. And then I'll pass it over to my colleague.
Thanks. So our residents' savings will be very substantial, starting with affordable workforce-friendly rents, and then adding in time and money-saving amenities built into our project, like on-site childcare, with lower negotiated costs for our residents and transportation savings. For example, on the slide, you can see for a single parent, they will actually save more than the cost of renting one of our apartments. The overall effect is like living rent-free. For the single adult, the savings will be almost as much as the rent, making establishing a life in Fargo and contributing to our workforce much easier and more appealing. We provided an apples-to-apples comparison with our competition in the infographic that was included in your packet. This slide shows our analysis updated with the information Jim Gilmore shared at the last committee meeting, and what is in today's packet. In either case, apples-to-apples comparison shows that our development creates significantly greater return on investment than the alternative. This comparison uses our single lot proposal to the alternative's two-lot proposal, meaning we create more benefit without expanding beyond the original RFP. However, as we showed in the infographic, we would be very happy to partner with the city to leverage our model to create even more benefits and affordable workforce housing by partnering with you and the Fargo Housing and Redevelopment Authority to redevelop that entire block. If we include rent savings compared to median in the ROA, it rises up to 75.26. Without those rent savings, but including Mr. Gilmore's projected costs of bus passes, the ROI is over 42% still. However, because there would be no need for added capacity in the bus system, and our tenants are unlikely to be current bus users, the actual cost of our request is likely to only be the cost of the physical passes themselves. Further, after people move out of our building, they'll have become veteran transit users and are far more likely to continue utilizing the system, which would generate added revenue for the city. So our model is proven. Authentic Housing's model has been proven and used by a variety of organizations across the country, as you can see here. Our method of financing has developed just under 10,000 units across the country. Car share programs are common across the country, both as a part of individual buildings as well as part of larger districts. They can be used for residents to run errands, take their kids to school, go to work, and reduce their overall transportation budgets significantly. Childcare is community development, and it is an important part of a strong economy and workforce. According to a 2021 report by AJ Consulting, many see the lack of affordability in daycare presenting itself as an opportunity for forward-thinking developers like us. Among the many possible ways to improve childcare affordability for residents are partnering with local daycare organizations to negotiate rate breaks in exchange for advertising, offer community space to local daycare operators to set up on-site care for children in the community, or set up a child care facility as a community amenity. The last two are what we're interested in. And we would tell everybody who's developing to steal these ideas from us. So we are focused on those last two. Our high-quality construction standard has been used in over 1 million square feet of projects across North America in 2018 alone, which doubled from 2017 numbers, and that growth pattern has continued. So as far as parking, we are catering to really three types of residents. Those who work and live downtown and therefore can live without the expense of a personal car. Those who live downtown and work elsewhere and can use public transit and also avoid the expense of a personal car. And those who live downtown but work outside of downtown and need a car because public transit isn't viable. We believe the first two will be very common. That's really our core demographic. And the last will be much less common, but they can be successful given the great investments the city has made in public parking downtown. Authentic Housing's goal is to make workforce housing as affordable as possible. Parking is very expensive. Building less of it results in lower rents. Building parking ramps for a single building is also a poor investment because innovations like autonomous vehicles and car shares are likely to become dominant in the near to midterm future. Services like Uber and Lyft are already common. Our development model leverages existing investments in public transit, public parking, and places with the potential for a successful car share program in order to produce more affordable workforce housing. and downtown Fargo is ideal for all three. However, if the community believes additional parking is necessary despite our target market and the DMU not requiring it, and the RFP not requiring it or suggesting it, we would be very happy to arrange a long-term lease agreement with the city. We would also be willing to redesign our development to include parking on site. The time for this is now. Developing enough affordable workforce housing relies on something called a qualified census tract. Census tracts are tested for qualification every year. Downtown Fargo has been losing affordable housing and building a lot of luxury housing. This trend can cause the downtown to lose its qualified census status. If this happens, our model no longer works in Fargo. Just under half of all citizens of Fargo and 66% of renters qualify for and absolutely need affordable workforce housing. Our friends and neighbors are struggling. The data is clear. This has already happened in many places across the country. From 2016 to 2022, Brooklyn, New York, which is the former home of affordable housing for the workforce of New York City, lost over 72% of their qualified census tracts. This has resulted in a severe lack of opportunity to build workforce housing, and we can all see in the news how New York City struggles in a variety of ways. And we don't have to struggle in those ways in cities like Fargo by taking the right steps now. And we just want to remind the committee that our proposal creates greater benefits on every metric, including pure return on investment for the city. Our model of public benefit-focused affordable workforce housing allows for greater benefits for both the city and the public as compared with older, less innovative models of housing development. However, the most important thing is the people who could benefit from authentic housing. We've met dozens of people who are excited about our proposal while giving community presentations, and two of those people we're fortunate to have them here today, Jacob Chalupnik and Dakota Rhodes. Jacob and Dakota, can you stand up? I'm going to share Jacob's story, and then we're going to show you Dakota's story. So Jacob grew up in poverty. He believes in hard work as a way to build a better life. Early in his working career, consistent car trouble forced him into low-paying jobs that were willing to accept his inconsistent transportation. Over many years, he was able to save up for a used car that didn't break down constantly, which was a struggle partly because of the cost of trying to hold together the car that he had. At times, he had to live with his parents to make ends meet. Once he had consistent transportation, though, he was able to get a better job, and he proved himself at that job. After earning the respect of his coworkers and his supervisors, he applied for a spot in trade school, and he was able to get in with their recommendation. And after getting in, now he's working 60 or more hours a week while also attending night school for the trade program. So Jacob is a real success story, and he has a message for you. It's hard, but I want to make my family proud. I want to break the cycle of poverty that's held onto my family, while also making something beautiful and leaving my mark on my hometown. I support this project because making it is hard, because pulling on my bootstraps and working hard has still taken a long time, and every year it gets harder and harder to afford to live and work towards a better life. And then we want to share Dakota's story.
My name's Dakota Rhodes. I grew up here in Fargo. I moved here when I was a baby with my mom and my sister. It's my home here. And I have an 11-year-old daughter, and this is where I would like to raise her. This is her home as well. I worked in the service industry in downtown Fargo for several years. I worked at Worst Beer Hall. That was a lot of fun. I worked at Tract Brewing Company, also a lot of fun. I've literally never even imagined the ability to walk to work. I have never lived close enough to the place that I worked where that was even a reality. For a number of years, I didn't have my own car. When Gigi was little, like toddler age, she actually liked to ride the bus. But because of where we were, the logistics of it, it would take an hour to get from North Fargo to downtown Fargo. which is a 6-minute drive in your own car. So yeah, if we had accessibility to transportation like that was reliable, it would have taken a huge burden off of me. I have struggled to pay bills since the moment I started getting my own bills. The cost of childcare and housing, it just was really undoable alone, like as a single parent. I lived with my mom for 5 years so that I could afford to live. And I still sent my daughter to preschool and daycare. Paying for utility bills has been a struggle. I've had my utilities shut off. It's a stressful way to live. I would like authentic housing to be a reality here in my home, where I live, where my daughter lives. I wouldn't have had to rely so heavily on loans from friends and family and using their everything, their laundry, their cars, to have all of those things readily available and reliable would be life altering, really, in a way that childcare and access to transportation that would give you freedom in your life to spend time with your kids, like do the things that you want to do, the things that you love to do, the things that you're passionate about. Yeah, having those things would be life altering, really. Feeling like you're on the edge of what could potentially be homelessness. Scary. And it can happen so quickly when you are living paycheck to paycheck, or you don't have a cushion of support. It just takes one event. And that's not a position you want to be in. No one wants to be in, but especially as a parent. I would ask that you please vote for authentic housing. It would mean a lot to me. It would mean a lot to people who've been in similar circumstances to me. It would literally be life altering in the most positive way that I can imagine.
That was a great, so are you ready for some questions?
Yes.
Are we ready, group? I guess, so if you don't mind, I'll get started. So you talked about, like, for a single apartment, it's around $500. Is that kind of a ballpark number?
Yeah, we published our rents in the proposal. Studio is $597, including all utilities.
And so can you, the other thing, obviously, this is a very unique proposal, especially compared to almost all the ones that we'll come across. Can you talk a little bit about the childcare thing? And then we talked yesterday a little bit about, it's a little bit difficult for me to get my arms around the whole subsidized transportation, and we haven't had that before. And so if you could kind of explain that and how that would work.
Sure. So we asked Commissioner Pepcorn to grill us, so this is a start. So one of the benefits of the way we do financing, which we talked a little bit about, is that you can create community space as part of it. And so what we would do is have space on the main floor for a number of amenities. They would not pay rent. So in exchange for being able to use that space, then we would negotiate lower rates for our users, and then they'd be able to have, or for our renters, and then we'd be able to have affordable childcare that's available downtown. And for them, not paying rent also means they can provide it at a lower price to everybody. And as far as the transit, we were thinking in developing the proposal, how can we create more benefit for the city? The goal of the In Focus plan and Go 2030 is to create more transit users, fewer people who are driving cars downtown and parking downtown. And we thought one way to do it is to encourage people to use the transit system by giving them a pass. And so from our thinking, a pass is just a piece of paper or a card, and that's relatively inexpensive. So we could ask for that. As we told Mr. Gilmore in an email, it would be perfectly fine if you're not willing to do that. We can make the project work despite that. We want to be flexible with you and create as much benefit as possible for the whole system.
Any other questions? And I guess just from my perspective, it's a very unique proposal, and it's something that we haven't encountered. And I'm guessing John and Arlette, who've been here longer than I, it's something we haven't really come across before. However, it's a new idea, and so I think that's, from our perspective, definitely something. Just because we haven't done it before, is it something you? So I guess I hope that's the message I get across. I think it's a great idea and something we need to pursue. However this all turns out, and that's what I said yesterday. And I think it's kind of cool. We have people. If you look at all the developers, it's a big mix of people from all different sizes, and I think that's kind of neat. So, all right, that's the end of my sermon for today. Any other questions from anybody?
My concern is when you look at long-term, Tyrone, I don't know that you've really done a financial analysis of the city's investment. I think there's transit costs money. You're going to give free transit to everybody in the community. That's a question. Some of the places that have rent downtown pay for their cable, pay for or internet, I would say. Internet, parking, different elements are part of that rent package that you have. You want us to put $2 million up front. You're not, you don't have the investors behind what you want to do. The concepts on your building are totally different than anything's been built in this community. Your concepts on your building is the wall on the outside that's built with all the different things to handle the heat and issue elements. And then you're going to have a unit space basically with clean air and clean heat and clean air conditioner or whatever. But it's a totally different concept on a building model, which to many builders in the community might think it's a little different, maybe more difficult to duplicate than in New York. And New York, I would say in transit, New York's fantastic. She just mentioned it takes her an hour in transit to get somewhere. It would take 6 minutes to drive. In New York, everybody relies on transit. Rarely do you have a car. In Fargo, it's kind of opposite. Hardly anybody does transit, and a lot of people do cars. So it's a great concept. If everybody can work downtown, you're doing childcare, you're really adding benefits that we haven't thought about. But there's also a cost. So number one, what do I do with all the other competitors in the room? Number two, what are the true costs to the city? So the true cost to the city, you're saving money for everybody in the room, but there's other ways we do low-income housing, and you're well aware of that. You're a planner, that do not consume as much money from the city. So what I'd really like to see is side-by-side comparison of what do we have to put into this project that you're developing. And right now, it says, at least on the sheets we have, you don't have a developer right now to be determined, purchase price to be determined. And the incentive right now is we're putting up $2 million. But plus the other issue I saw in the proposal is we're going to supply the cars, which I have no idea how much that's going to cost on an annual basis. So it's a beautiful concept of how to bring rent space down for many people. That would be very helpful in our community. But the overall investment by the city of Fargo really has to be ferreted out. And 1 to 2 million, Dave, are you willing to do 2 to 3 mils to our budget to pay for this project? And that's what, as commissioners, we would have to look at. Because if your annual cost is up there, as the city can now subsidize low-income housing, and we do in many ways, and we have done that. I think the commission, we've had many projects before us lately in that regard. So on your pro forma, what I'd love to see is a pro forma on the cost to the city of Fargo.
Sure. Commissioner Pepcorn, he's beating you. The grill just happened now. Step it up. So I would say, first of all, the financial analysis that we provided is an internal rate of return. Even with the cost of transit at the higher level that Mr. Gilmore included, we would be a 42% annual return for the city over 25 years. That's not including the $2 million, which if you look at the letter we sent Mr. Gilmore, we said that if that doesn't work for the city, we can find another way. You said that we don't have investors. That's not accurate. We didn't say that anywhere in the proposal. That's not anything we shared or is true. You said it's different. The Jeremiah project in Fargo or West Fargo, they do a lot of the same things we do. There's a project in Grand Forks that uses Passive House. There are projects all over Minnesota and all over the Midwest that do Passive House, the high quality construction.
But the Jeremiah was paid by a nonprofit. The Jeremiah was not paid by the city.
No, we're not asking you to pay for anything.
A return on investment means I'm going to put investment in or you're going to put the investment in. A 61% return on investment is who's putting the money in.
It's the value of the land is what we used in both cases for both.
Land?
For both. That's right. Yeah. We'd be glad to show you how it worked and run through it, but we used the same assumptions for both proposals. So, and we're not asking for a TIF or a pilot or exemptions over the long run. Many of the proposals here today are. We're not. So we're ready to pay taxes on for the first day we open.
But Tyrone, you know, a TIF and pilot goes away after 10 to 15 years.
Right. When
I'm going to be invested in transit for 50 years. I'm going to be invested in cars for 20 years. Right. I'm going to be invested in a lot of items. So when you say return on investment, I still have an investment on there yearly. And your investors in all the other projects, the investors are doing the investment. Our return on investment is not necessarily on that. In taxable value, we get off that return. So a $51 million project brings money back to us.
That's right.
So when you say return on investment, we're doing our RO study right now. We're doing it in all the neighborhoods. And actually, we're finding a great return on investment in a normal house. So the house that you saw that your Porsche put up here does a return on investment to the city. So I just need the taxpayers to know, what is your project going to actually cost us as a community over the long term? I love helping out people to get an apartment, but what is it going to cost us on an annual basis?
So if we compare us to our alternative, Mr. Gilmore's analysis showed that we would pay more than twice as much in property taxes, and because we are not asking for a TIF or a pilot.
Gilmore has not shown us that today. And today, when we're trying to make a decision on your project, I'm not asking what Gilmore knows in his head. I'm asking you to give me the cost of this project over 25 to 30 years. Don't give me return on investment. Give me what is a project going to cost the community and the city.
Nothing. I mean, we're asking for a discount on the land. That's it.
$2 million to start.
No. We sent a letter and we said, if the $2 million investment up front doesn't work, it makes it easier for us because it gets us past some financial barriers in the process. But we can make it work without it. And so
if I can interrupt, I think this is there are some technical questions to this. This is a very unique proposal, and so there's a lot of things that, because we haven't gone through this before, it isn't black and white. And so the mayor's questions are relevant, but I think we have to work with the developers to be a little more, this takes some time.
Yeah, and we're happy to walk the mayor through a pro forma. We tried to get a meeting before this meeting took place, and we weren't able to secure a meeting. We reached out to everyone to make sure that if there's any questions or concerns about our proposals or our pro formas or anything in that matter, that we'd be happy to sit down and walk you through those numbers. And again, this isn't unique. It's done all over the country. And it's probably a little bit, I guess, unique in the sense that it's being done in Fargo, but those are legitimate questions. And yes, we did send out a lot of information in our proposal to Jim Gilmore. But again, Mayor Tim, we're happy to walk you through our pro forma to get those questions answered.
But I do think the other key thing is this has been done in other areas. And so to me, if we can get more examples of how that works, that would make us much more comfortable too, I think, as far as a group. So
yeah, absolutely.
So I hope you don't take all these questions negatively, but this is a very unique proposal. And so with that, Commissioner Preston.
Yeah, just a quick question.
Real quick, one thing that is unique about this is the fact that I've never been to a Renaissance Zone Authority meeting. I've never been to a meeting to discuss plan proposals for the city, but we're talking about housing that's affordable for people that live here. You watch that video with Dakota, you might think maybe, oh, that's trying to pull at heartstrings and things, but you know, Dakota's situation here is not unique in any way. You're talking about what's it gonna cost the city? What's it gonna cost the city when more people can't afford to live here? I believe that we need to stand for more than what we're bringing. Okay, I know making money for the city is important, but you also have to think about the people that live and work downtown. I don't think you understand how hard it is to make a living down here. I don't have a car. I ride the bus, I walk, I Uber, I'm limited to having to work downtown, which is great because I love downtown. But you know, my options are more limited. It's hard not having a vehicle. And this is something that has made me passionate enough to come to this meeting. This has made me passionate enough to fight to make this housing proposal happen because I believe people here need a chance. They need a better chance to live. They need to feel like they have a place in this community where they can feel safe and comfortable and have I feel like we're not putting enough, you're talking about what's it gonna cost the city, but we gotta think about what's it gonna cost the city when the people that work downtown can't afford to live here. And that's the thing we need to think about. What do you think people at these restaurants and bars downtown make? What is downtown Fargo without the restaurants and bars?
And to answer that question, the city of Fargo, affordable housing is #1 priority right now. We're looking at that. We know what Dakota's going through. We know what you're going through. This may not be the right proposal because we don't have all the finances. Would you buy a car if I said you can afford it and you don't know the price? No. You have to look at the price. And this meeting does. I have 3 blanks on this proposal. To be determined, to be determined. Are you going to pay for the thing? Lack of capital. So the elements to this project may not work. We do have projects that come into our community that do low-income housing. They work and they're financed and they work just fine. And the return on investment for the renter is fantastic. #1 priority of the city right now is affordable housing. We understand that and we know that. All 3 of us sitting here are committed to a project to look into that. This has a lot of holes in it. In this meeting, we look at is, will this work and what's the financial? I would be not doing the right thing if I didn't ask, what is the capital investment from the city? I only have a budget that's so much. And if you say, well, Tim, just do it and raise taxes, that's not being as good as well. But I think we've had our time. We've listened to your proposal. Follow-up questions, Tyrone can get back to us, and we're just asking for just more clarity. So. Yep. And we have projects in town. We have projects in town with that. I can have 100 people come in here and testify the greatness of the projects we've had.
Can I interject here?
You sure can.
I have a question.
No, come on now.
I would like to ask my question if I could. Tyrone, or I'm sorry, I'm not remembering your name, but if you could answer a question in regards to 2 of them, actually, in regards to the daycare. So to pass the savings on to the residents, I'm assuming you have some kind of agreement with whatever provider you would bring in?
That's right.
That savings
Yes,
is passed
yes.
on? Okay. Can you give us some sense of, you mentioned the Jeremiah project having kind of a similar concept. Can you give us a sense of how many of the individuals are living in these kinds of buildings that don't have a car? And if they do have a car and need a car, the addition of parking expense gets added in. And have you considered that?
Sure. So first I would say that if the city wants us to do a long-term lease for the downtown parking that exists, which we would be happy to do, and we can work that in with our financing without affecting the overall, the affordability of the rents, there might have to be some additional conversation and coordination about that. But we can do that. So if that's something that's important, we can do that for sure. As far as the childcare, it's like you said, we are able to negotiate a lower price for the people based on them not having to pay any rent as a result of financing. But I'd like to push back on some of the things Mayor Mahoney said. Our proposal.
You know what? In the sake of time, I totally get it, and I just think there's more questions that will come from this. And so I think, and also from the perspective of emotion, I think it might be good to just.
So I just
go
want to
ahead and finish up your thoughts.
I just want to be clear: the person that came up is not part of our team. It wasn't part
No,
of our
we got that.
presentation. Right?
Yeah, we got that.
But some of the things are factually incorrect and they're in our proposal. We'd love to walk you through it. And we want to partner with you to make sure that we can meet your goals.
Last question.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, two more questions.
congratulations on bringing a very unique proposal forward, and I know it's combining.
John, will you lean into your mic a little bit more?
Oh, I'm sorry. I know you're combining different ideas from different communities, different sizes, and I applaud that. You're innovating, and unfortunately, innovators have to mitigate risk by fully explaining how this is going to work.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to be critical of, you can pull threads apart on this, but you're kind of crossing over budgets as you're saying, okay, we'll throw in transit tickets, and then the city commission a year from now has a deficit in the transit budget, and they're saying, well, you're giving away our product. And so I would encourage you, if you're going forward with this, to be very detailed in how it works.
Right.
This committee making recommendation, I think, needs to be very careful that we don't put forth a plan that doesn't succeed and look at all the costs that have to be covered and all the things that have to be built into it. So I apologize. I know it's frustrating. You say it very clearly as you look at this, but I would just encourage you to go much deeper on those programs. And I will tell you, 10 parking spaces scare me. For years, the city has worked hard and adopted different parking standards for multi-family buildings. And there's still not one today that you drive by that doesn't have off-street parking and a real mess. And so I recognize your assumptions that things are going to change, but we can't force that change. And to put 150 or some units with 10 parking spaces, although I know people don't have cars and there's a switch towards transit and the various car services and things that are gonna come, but that's one thing that I look at. And then again, the other side of it is that for us to try and compare and make recommendation, we're gonna have to understand what the purchase price of the property would be so that we can look at these on an equal basis. So
Absolutely.
I applaud your effort. I apologize that the standard that you're going to have to meet in bringing some of these innovative things together is going to require more thought and more detail. And,
Your questions are wonderful. Those are excellent questions. We only have 15 minutes today, so we can't go in depth about how a 4% tax credit program works. I'm pretty certain no one here has done one of those deals. It takes a bit of time to work through it, but we would be very happy to do that. So if you personally or the group would like to go through every detail of how these work together, we would be very happy to put together that presentation. Today we knew we only had 15 minutes. We tried to hit the high points, but we can answer every one of those questions.
Yeah, and I think it's critical that in this review sheet, we don't know purchase price, we don't know the developer, the ability, and there is going to be a problem funding this and identifying those sources and
so we're the developer, and if you're talking about the general contractor, we have two that we work with that know how to do the construction style that we do, and we would train local subcontractors to do the work underneath them. We put that in our proposal.
Yep.
And then as far as the property price, originally we offered to pay $2.7 million for the property. That was in the proposal. And then we also needed then $2 million to move forward. Mr. Gilmore made it clear that wouldn't work for the city. So we said, okay, that's fine. Then we just need to have a discount on the property. So what we put into our ROI is that it's zero, and we use the land value that Mr. Gilmore included in your packet today, $489,000. So that was the investment that we included for both, minus the purchase price that was offered.
Okay, two more questions, but then in the respective time, we have other presenters today, and so we have to be moving
Thank you
along.
so much,
So I
Mr. Chair.
apologize for that. Go ahead, Arlette.
Just a comment, actually, and to contradict a little bit the mayor's comments a little bit earlier. When we're looking at workforce housing, which is a topic that we are going to have to grapple with, hate to say it, it will involve, and it will have to involve some city involvement. Now, granted, we need to know upfront what that would be as we're going into it, but this is not the end of it. I mean, we're going to be seeing more of these, hopefully, and as we get the housing study back, we'll have a better sense of truly that gap for workforce housing. And we've had 2 presenters now today talking about workforce housing, and it's not the topic that's going to go away, and we're going to have to be involved in it.
Sorry, I think maybe a little bit of optimism here, but the first one through the wall is always bloody. So I appreciate your time and trying to put together something that makes sense. And I would encourage that if this proposal isn't brought forward, that we as a city, as a committee, do our due diligence to sit down with you and understand it, so that we can encourage any other developer that is interested to take on the types of thinking and roles that you've put into some of these buildings as programs, and that this shouldn't stop your work moving forward to help them understand where you're coming from, which might work all over the country. So please be a partner and continue to do it. Educate us on what we might not know, because it's different. And the things you don't understand are sometimes the scariest. So I would like to say that, and also anything you have in addition, please give it to Jim so we can understand it and find out if there are inconsistencies with anything that we've received. It might have been lost in documents and translation, and we'd love to see it in its entire package. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you for your presentation. So now we'll move along. Jim, will you help us with that? And Jim, will you give us an update? How many more presentations so we can all schedule according? Because the chairman might have to schedule a rest break at some point.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to take a break now, but we'll have one more on this site that is from Kilbourne Group. As Arlette noted, their proposal would include both this particular property and an adjacent property they own from the south. So with that, I'll just turn it over to them, and we'll probably take a break after this because I know Commissioner Pepcorn needs to step away.
Ready? Good afternoon. My name is Keith Lear. I'm the Vice President of Development and Construction for Kilbourne Group. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to present this project to you. 25 years ago, the city of Fargo made a commitment to downtown. They said, we want to reestablish the cultural and the business center of our city. Through that effort and through that commitment, a significant amount of work was done on the city to establish things like TIF districts, Renaissance zones, et cetera. And also strategic master plans, the In-Focus plan or the Go 2030 plan that we've been talking about in some capacity here today. Those things set the target and they set the roadmap for the city to get to where it is today. 15 years ago, Kilbourne Group made a commitment to align with the city in that plan and be a strategic partner on the private side of this development and recommit to building the city to its former greatness and what it is today. 15 years ago, we realized that there is an opportunity to bring in DSU downtown and the importance of having that student population down here and the energy that it can bring. We looked at historic preservation, the true history of Fargo, and how do we save those buildings, reestablish those buildings and make them the jewels of the history of our city. We looked at things like workforce housing. There was a tremendous amount of workforce housing in this downtown. In fact, most of it was affordable or workforce housing at that time. How do we not only maintain that stuff but establish it, make sure that it stays consistent and stays long-term as a viable part of our downtown? Then we looked at places like community spaces. We looked at additional infill opportunities to bring more revenue, more tax generation to the city. All of those things adding to the vibrancy of this downtown. So when we look at this project, we think about that long-term vision. We look at that roadmap that the city put in place, and we look at this as an opportunity to continue that effort. I'm excited to talk about this project, not only as a representative of Kilbourne Group here, but as a representative of the Clara Barton neighborhood where my family lives. as a representative of a Kilbourne Group team that lives and works and plays down here, not only 5 days a week during the office, but often here on the weekends and the evenings, enjoying this community that we've all worked together to build. So as part of this presentation, we want to talk specific to this site. We want to talk about a development strategy as how we approach this site. We want to talk about project options and the details associated with our proposal, the tax base and the incentive impact associated with the project, and then a little bit about Kilbourne Group's track record along the way of these past 15 years. We'll talk first about our strategy. So alignment with the city plan. Throughout the last 25 years, the city has done a good job of putting that strategic roadmap together. I highlighted earlier the In Focus and the Go 2030 plans, talking about things like grow as a neighborhood, play with purpose, promoting infill and quality development, celebrating the river, bringing us a sense of high design or proudness to our city. When we look at this project, we say we hit all of these types of things. And while this project does not represent all of those things in one single site, it does help us grow as a neighborhood. It provides more housing opportunities in downtown. Those same plans acknowledge that there needs to be more and more residents downtown. Those more and more residents in downtown help support the small businesses and the community activities that are happening here. We're playing with purpose or celebrating the river. This project and this unique location is sort of a kind of a tucked away corner of the downtown. You have the opportunity to be a couple blocks off of Broadway, which is the urban center of our city, but then be in a little bit quieter corner of downtown and have a great connection to the river. We want to play up both of those opportunities in this project. We talk about design. Kilbourne Group, we feel like we are proud of our projects that we bring online. We are attentive to the design and the aesthetics, the pedestrian experience as they experience these, not only for the people that are living and enjoying these spaces as residents of these spaces or tenants of these spaces, but also as a city. When we drive by, we're showcasing our city, we're showcasing the projects and the things that we're doing. It's great for people that have pride in their city and pride when they're bringing other guests into our city. Riverfront District is one of the new things that's been established for the city, or most recently. We understand the city's goal here of connecting to the city and the strategy they're implying to connect to the river. The importance of this Riverfront District and being a property within this Riverfront District is to establish funds associated with a larger public opportunity in establishing the Plaza south of City Hall here, the connection to the city, and really celebrating that component of this. And all of those things, as we start to look at how this project comes together, our opportunity is we say, hey, we look at our portfolio, we look at the studies in downtown. We have 95% plus occupancy in our buildings right now. That tells us there's a demand for these types of products. And so we're able to produce a product or propose a product that we have confidence in that we will be able to fill that for a demand for a population that wants to have this type of product. So in our proposal, you will have noticed that we proposed 3 options. As we currently have an option agreement to control the south side of our site. There's a lot there that we have control of. Two of our options are really centered around combining our current property or our current controlled property with the city's proposed property here, and then a third one looking at a grander vision that ultimately could expand this into a larger project by utilizing the Fargo Public Schools property that's also for sale right now. We feel confident in all 3 of these options. We have the ability to raise the investment funds to be able to fund these. We have a track record of financing these projects, and we have an outstanding contractor group in-house that can build and deliver these projects. Getting into the specifics of the project, option 1, this is a little bit more of a simpler project. Total project value is about $15 million. We park the entire project on this site. We understand the importance of this community's relationship with parking at this point in history. Enclosed heated parking in these winters is an important thing as an amenity. We look at about 72,000 square feet. Apartments are 74 units, and this is really a single loaded corridor that's playing off of one of the main and maybe forgotten amenities of the city, and that is connection to our river. Option 2 This is a $25 million project. On closed parking, we have about 152 stalls. This project becomes a little bit more complex. We end up building what we would call a podium structure across the entire site to house our parking, and then we're building on top of that podium structure. 104,000 square feet with 114 apartment units here. Option 3, and this gets into the larger component here. We've had some initial discussions with Fargo, the Fargo Public Schools about this option, and so we'd be encouraged if we were to go into this realm with the support of the city. Our goal here is we would build this in 2 phases. We'd have project 1, or phase 1, which would be the right side of the screen or the river side of this project, and phase 2 being the left side of the screen or more of the traditional Fargo public school site right now. In this value, total project value, about 67 million. Total parking stalls, there's a combination of on-grade and below-grade parking. Square footage, just under 300,000 square feet and about 300 new apartment units on this site. In all 3 of these, we are very conscious of the types of amenities and things we offer in our projects. Opportunities for rooftop gardens, club rooms, exercise rooms, outdoor patios with river views, package delivery systems, smart rent technology. We're doing a very good job of adapting to society's needs for the continuation of smart rent and smart technologies for deliveries and those types of things, making it more user-friendly and pedestrian, or excuse me, user-friendly, and then think of like a delivery driver-friendly type of environments. Bike rooms. We talked about exercise rooms, having that active connection for health and wellness of the building, but then also having a great connection to the river because that is, literally across the street, and it's a great location to be able to celebrate that. The tax base and incentive side of this, to summarize here, so option 1, the smallest project, $15 million. Again, our TIF assistance ask here is about $800,000. The public TIF increment or the benefit to the city because of this TIF district is about $2.6 million. Option 2 is a $25 million project. TIF assistance is $3 million with a public benefit of the TIF increment over 25 years, $3.4 million. And then option 3, the public TIF increment would have about $7.4 million, and our TIF assistance ask in this one is $8.4. I want to highlight that the large jump in the TIF between option 2 and option 3 from our standpoint is really about the school land, buying the school land and helping to improve that site or demo that building, improve that site, and buy down the cost of that project to make this whole thing work. Highlight of property tax growth on the project. Right now, all 3 sites together make $24,000 in annual property tax for the project. In the case of project 1, we would be taking a private place or private tax payment and then combining it with a public. So there's additional private gain on the public piece that's not paying taxes right now. But after this incentive package wears off, we would be at about $213,000 of tax revenue per year in the city's favor. Project 2, that jumps to about 253, and then project 3, an annual tax growth to $784,000 of the project. A little bit about our Kilbourne Group track record. Some of our current and ongoing projects here. This is the lofts over Mezzaluna. The upper right corner is one of our apartment units in Roco, Dillard, Broadway Square. All of these things being a very mixed and diverse portfolio, but also adding to the diversity and the attractability of our downtown. We look at a couple more examples here, the Jackson Apartments, the Roberts Alley in the bottom corner, Woodrow Apartments in the top left. Community spaces and some of the amenities that we offer, that's the Dillard's Patio building. We have Roberts Commons Garage, which has been a big part of the strategic planning partnerships with the city. We have currently 1001, this is over at the old Nestor Bar site on 10th Street. That's under construction. The black building, a great opportunity or a great example of historic preservation we've been involved with, and then maintaining some of the original character places like the taco shop, Subway, and the existing building stock in downtown. 3 of our current projects that are slated to open this summer. We have Mercantile, that's at the corner of 4th Avenue and Broadway. We have the Landing at 1001, we mentioned that earlier, that's at the old Nestor Bar site, NP and 10th Street, and then Kessler Apartments, that's on 2nd Avenue, just west of Broadway. And then to highlight a couple of the private partnerships that we've worked on with the city to date. Mercantile mixed use with a parking ramp and then a mixed use wrap around it. And then the Dillard and Roberts Commons development effort with the Robert Commons ramp and then Roberts Commons and Dillard adjacent to that project. And that's what I have. I appreciate any questions or clarifications or.
Can I start off with a question? Just the ballpark figure in rents, just give us an idea there.
Yeah, so we would start anywhere kind of the mid 800s and then go north of there depending on final unit size. We'd be the mid 800s is kind of our entry level studios, alcove type units on the project, and we could see places up in the upper 1,000s, maybe 2,000, depending on the size of the unit when we're final design.
Jessica.
Since we started, was there always an option 3, or did that recently materialize?
There's been an option 3 in our proposal
Okay,
since day one.
I must have. I think maybe we originally got it, but it's not on this sheet.
On this sheet, the
Because we have 1 and 2, but we don't have.
we will get that to you, Jessica.
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
I can address that. It just had to do with the formatting. It didn't get printed right. But keep in mind that option 2 is sort of the same, and option 3 is option 2 plus an addition. So we looked at option 2 separately because
The mayor only gives us
the third phase may or may not happen.
The mayor only gives us so much budget money for paper.
You
and we
only
ran
get so
out of
much
that.
space. That's it.
Yeah.
So then that leads me to my question is, I'm considering that you and your team are the experts in your suggestion. Which of the 3 would you choose? Whenever I'd ask somebody to come give me a proposal, I'm like, tell me what your best is. So you've come with 3. What do you feel is the best representation of the space?
Option 2 is a high value, I'd say well within our wheelhouse type of project for this city. The great thing about option 2 is it gives us the option to do number 3 right behind it. So we would love to, as a overall impact and utilization of this site, we'd love to get the option 3, but we realize there's a lot of work that needs to get done.
Just a question on your TIF. We seem to be going further down on TIFs rather than 25 years. We seem to be headed for 15. Is your whole proposal dependent on a 25-year TIF?
No, we did our overall tax kind of revenue analysis on a 25-year horizon. The first project, option 1, is a combination of a 5-year Renaissance zone and then 5 years worth of TIF, so a total of 10 years on that project. Then the second 2 projects are both a combination of the 5 years plus 10 years on top of that, so a total of 15 years on the two options.
Any other,
I have a question for Jim. I seem to remember when we talked about this downtown, this is inside the downtown TIF, is it not, the boundary?
Yes, it is. And so.
And it's, let me ask the question. It seems to me that I remember, I specifically asked, once we have the downtown TIF established, as we did, can projects actually ask for a TIF inside that district? And I thought the answer was no.
No, they can certainly ask for some of the TIF proceeds within that district. Is that, trying to create a TIF within a TIF, that wouldn't happen, but if you did a pilot within a TIF district, that would detract from the TIF revenue. So I don't know if we can get this sheet up again, but the overall strategy of this riverfront plan is how can we do public amenities along the river, as well as affordable housing to get an overall redevelopment that would include a wide range of housing, with the first activities being bringing in, private sector housing, trying to limit the exemptions as short as possible, and then we can move on. And so, for instance, this site 2 is what we're talking about today, combine 2 and 6, and then have revenue from that go over and work on affordable housing and site 7. And the next proposal you'll hear about is kind of 3 and 5. And again, taking a share of the TIF proceeds so that some goes to public benefit, some goes to make a project feasible by assisting the developers. So, but if we don't help the developers get things done, we'll be sitting here 15 years from now looking at the same thing along the river with no public amenities and no affordable housing.
Jim, on the affordable housing you're putting downtown, could Dakota apply for that? Would she be eligible to apply for those affordable houses we're putting downtown?
Yeah, I think some of it's senior limited, some of it's family. For instance, the Edge Artist Flats, that is an affordable housing project that includes for families. I don't know if they're fully rented up yet or not. We can try to get that information.
I'd like to, can we see the comparison of the proposal we had today and just kind of see that so we can see,
yeah,
the rents were great. I liked your rents, Tyrone. Those things were great. But can we see, what side by side is so we can have, because we've proposed those before.
Yeah, I mean, the Edge Artist Flats, I think those rents are even less than what Authentic Housing is proposing because they've been able to get some low-income housing tax credits. And so I think for Authentic Housing, a lot of those rents citywide are just they're average for what we'd see citywide in apartments in the downtown. We kind of have 2 ranges of apartments. We have a lot of stuff that was built in the 1960s or 50s or 40s that's quite old and the rents are lower. They don't have all the amenities. And then we have the 1,400 units that have been built in the last several years. A few of those are affordable housing projects, but probably 80% of them are market rate.
Thank you very much for your presentation. So what we're going to do is take a break. So we're going to resume at 3 o'clock. At 3 o'clock, Deb is going to be the chair because I have a potential conflict with a property that I own. So with that, you're on your own time for about 9 minutes. Thank you.
I think Chairman Mathern anxious to get started, so.
If everybody can take their seats, we're ready to get started. One more presentation. Go ahead, Jim.
I'd like to introduce a group from Lloyd Companies and Green Acres. I've actually had some discussions on and off with them for at least a couple of years. They've done some hotel development as well as multifamily housing. They've looked at our markets, looked at different potential sites downtown, and so, this particular site had a real strong interest to them. So we have two proposals from this site, and one is from Lloyd that you'll hear, and they're actually going to build a block north of the property we own, but I'll explain to them that the only way they can get this property is to have access to the site that we own for parking for American Federal. The second proposal that you'll see a week from now is from Kevin Bartram's group that would just develop multifamily housing on the site of the former health building. So I'll let Green Acres and Lloyd Companies introduce their team and their proposal, and then we'll get to it. So thank you for making the trip up here today on this windy day.
I promise I wasn't going to say anything about that, but I will. My name is Josh Aberson. I am a partner at Green Acre Companies. We are a real estate development company based out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We are thrilled to be here today. Like I wasn't going to say it, but we would have been even more thrilled had Mr. Gilmore requested this proposal in June or July, but we are nonetheless thrilled to be here. And I don't mean that, I don't even mean to say that flippantly. Our team has spent an enormous amount of time and resources putting this project together to be able to stand here today for your consideration. So we greatly appreciate your time. I'll dig into it. So we have two parcels currently under contract. On the corner of 4th and 4th. For the purposes of this presentation, I'll refer to them in two different ways, one being the American Bank parcel and the other being the True Green parcel. So if we are awarded the RFP at 401 3rd Avenue, we would be raising the site at that location. We would then, as developers, be reconstructing a new modernized parking asset for American Bank. American Bank would then be taking ownership of that space, and then we would effectively be doing a land swap with American Bank, and we would be taking ownership of their parcel, which is the southern half of this block. In being able to do so, we would effectively be doubling the size of the parcel that's currently being offered by the city through the RFP. So in doing that, we're able to bring a level of activation and scale and density to this project that is far superior to that of the other competing bid for RFP on this ground. Overall highlights for the project: 200,000 square feet of usable space, 115 hotel rooms, 108 market rate multifamily apartments, 167 covered parking stalls. That is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $38.5 million in total production assets, and based on the current taxes on those two sites, we would be increasing that by over $400,000 annually. So we've put together a very capable team to present the rest of this project today. ESG is our design team. They're based out of Minneapolis, and Lloyd Companies, based out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. They are our co-developer and running construction and management. So I'll have each of them give some details on the project, and then we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. My name is Heather Whalen. I'm from ESG Architecture and Design. I am a licensed architect in the state of North Dakota, but I'm also a partner at ESG. I am here with my colleague, Bert Coffin, who's a principal at ESG as well. We really appreciate the opportunity to present the design work that we've done so far. We consider this preliminary design and are looking forward to working with the city, with Green Acre, and with Lloyd Companies on developing this design further. What I'd like to do is go ahead and click through some slides that demonstrate the work that we've done so far and kind of explain some of our thinking on how the site could best be used. We were looking at a design that included a single-story podium with 5 stories of residential units, apartment units, and guest rooms, hotel guest rooms, with an AC by Marriott Hotel. As you can tell by the site plan, we've oriented the hotel spaces to the west to kind of sort of be the gateway from Broadway as pedestrian traffic starts to kind of work their way close to the river along 4th Avenue. So we've positioned some of the busier, kind of the more commercial-oriented spaces like the hotel lobby, pre-function and meeting spaces on the west, also hoping to kind of take advantage of that proximity to the Mercantile public parking ramp. We do have parking on site. As you can see at the main floor street level, we've got 47 parking stalls. And as we go through the plans, you'll see that we've got 120 parking stalls below grade. So both heated and covered below grade. And then at the street level, it would be covered parking as well. And as you can see here on the first floor, we've also oriented the residential lobby to the southeast of the site so that it's sort of, the rest of the building can kind of provide a buffer for those residential spaces. We've got some walk-up units and kind of an urban design on the east side that would face the other site across 4th Street North. So I'm gonna go ahead and click through. Feel free to ask questions at the end about any of the information we're showing here. As you can see, we're drawing inspiration on the context, architectural context of downtown Fargo. We've got a lot of notable and kind of nearby adjacent buildings shown here, and we've really drawn kind of from the scale and the materials that are used elsewhere downtown for the design of our project as well. This first view is just as a quick starter view, but it's from the east side showing those residential units. On the left of the view will be the residential lobby entrance with walk-up apartment units at the street level here. Another important feature of our design and consideration has been the pedestrian experience and the streetscape design. We want to make sure that we're paying the appropriate amount of attention to the landscape design, to the pedestrian experience, to the amount of glazing on the street, so that for the residential units, it's appropriately private, but on the commercial side, we'll have enough glazing to make that really active, engaged connection from the interior to the exterior. And we also want it to feel safe, so that connection is important to us. You'll see later we've got an evening view just to kind of give some sense of the light activity that we'd like to be part of the pedestrian experience there. This view is from the south, so kind of what we're considering the official front of the building, but we always approach our designs knowing that they're viewed from multiple angles, and we take great care to select the appropriate materials for all sides of our buildings. For this particular facade, you can also see the streetscape and that sort of extension between the downtown Broadway corridor to the east. Sort of behind you in this view would be Proof Distillery, and then off to your right would be the Side Street Grill. So you can see that there would be sort of an extension of that commercial corridor down this way. As I mentioned, the AC Hotel lobby entrance is off the south side, and so we're considering that lounge kind of another commercial space, kind of capitalizing on the adjacency of the rest of the commercial activity downtown. In this view, you can also see that we've got an outdoor amenity terrace that would be at level 2. So you can kind of see some greenery kind of peeking up above the guardrail there in between the two building masses. And so that would be a nice amenity for hotel guests as well as apartment residents. And then just as I was mentioning, this is a view of what the building might look like in the evening, just creating that liveliness both day and into the evening, knowing that there is a lot of activity downtown at both of those times, and wanting to make sure that it's safe, that people are able to see bikes and they're able to see pedestrians as they're making their way to and from their apartment units, as well as travelers that are here to experience the city going to their guest rooms. This is, oops, didn't expect that. All right, moving on. This is a view from the west. So this would be the side that faces the public parking ramp attached to the mercantile property. We've oriented, as I mentioned, those meeting spaces and kind of the pre-function spaces toward this side. We think it will actually be kind of beneficial to keep that high level of activity sort of oriented to the west side. And then above that are guest rooms. We are working on kind of how the building envelope behaves along the north side. We want to be respectful of the private property that's there. We are looking at, you know, in continuing sort of that pedestrian streetscape along that walkway so that that experience is also walkable on the north side as well. Another view from the southeast, looking at the residential lobby on your right. And then as you can see, we've selected high quality materials for the exterior. There's an appropriate amount of glazing. We've got balconies for the residential units, a really nice selection of brick. These, I know they're very small scale, but on your upper left, you can see the second floor plan, which includes just, sorry, it's really sort of small on the screen compared to the scale of previous plans we showed. But on the left, we've got the hotel, and on the right, there's an L-shaped portion that's housing. And that extends, those units would stack for 5 floors. So you're getting a total of 115 guest rooms and 108 residential units. And it would be a mix of 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and studios. So as you can see on the upper right, we're just showing a glimpse of what the below grade parking layout would look like. And 120 stalls there. ESG, I was gonna say that coming into Fargo today was kind of emotional for me. I've been coming to Fargo frequently as I've been working on the Jasper Hotel with Kilbourne Group. And so I've really kind of grown to be passionate and love Fargo through that process. Learning a lot about the Fargo market through the design of that property, and just coming back and seeing kind of the impact that we've been able to make on the community through the good design work. A couple of other projects where we were able to help set the design direction and be sort of the design architect, partnering with Kilbourne Group and with the city of Fargo. Here you see ROCO. That was a project that we were able to sort of help set the design direction for and play a role in, as well as Dillard and Kessler. You can see kind of here in the bottom left, those buildings that were already highlighted by Keith in his presentation as well. And this is the Kessler Apartments as well, coming soon. Jasper Hotel, as I mentioned, 125 guest rooms, 3,800 square feet of meeting space, and 250 occupants in the ballroom here. For the project that we're proposing, the AC Hotel, we're expecting to have 4,500 square feet of ballroom space and availability for 300 people in that space. So we're hoping to really help provide additional meeting space for the city with all of the commercial and business growth that you've been experiencing. We want to be there to help kind of be support for that, for those functions. Oops. And another project that we're proud of is Woodrow Apartments, also with Kilbourne Group. We've just been really honored to participate in a few projects with them and learn from them about the love for the city of Fargo and, you know, how to be good neighbors and good residents and community members here. So with that, I'd like to introduce Luke Jessen from Lloyd Companies to walk us through the next few slides.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I echo our team's thankfulness to have the opportunity to present this project. I'm the Vice President of Development with Lloyd Companies. We're a 50-year-old regional development company based in Sioux Falls. But I just wanted to touch on our role in the project. We would be co-developers with Green Acre Companies and then serve as the general contractor and then the operator of the site as well. Each year, just to put our company into scale, we put together about $230 million of construction volume every year throughout our footprint, and we operate with our 2 property management companies probably about $1.5 billion in assets. So I get to talk to you guys a little bit about the AC by Marriott. When we started working on this RFP, we took a look at all different hotel chains. We aren't necessarily tied to any specific chain. We work with Hilton, we work with Hyatt, many different groups. And as we studied downtown Fargo, we landed on AC and felt like that was the most appropriate brand for the market. And AC fits together really well. It's an upscale brand as they measure it in the star chain scales. And it would be comparable to a Kimpton or a Hyatt Centric or the Canopy by Hilton. There's been about 190 hotels through 2021 that have been built under the AC flag, and there's 126 in the pipeline right now. And we felt like AC was a really good brand because it could focus on making harmony with downtown Fargo. It's a very modern, clean brand, but it's also very comfortable. As you can see with the guest rooms, they're very efficient, but they're designed to be minimal and clean with very warm materials that make you feel like you're at your home away from home. And then one of the pieces that I'm really excited about is the AC Lounge. It's very modern, but it's focused very much on interacting with the streetscape so that it's not just a hotel bar and lobby, that it's a space that evolves throughout the day, that from breakfast meetings and things like that happen in the lobby to happy hours and nightlife and the connection with the conference center, that it really accents that corner that Heather pointed out. Facing Broadway and really hoping to provide that activation between the spaces. So then I'm just going to leave this slide up showing some of the project metrics that we discussed, and our whole team will be available to answer any questions that you might have.
I have a question. So I think what's confusing about this, and Jim, it's partially how this spreadsheet is put together, is that we're not talking about the property that you're going to be building on. It's the property that you want to be able to exchange with the bank. So, you know, I guess, Jim, I would like to understand truly, I mean, if we're talking about that property, we're not talking this kind of investment. And the thing that concerns me about this is that that property then will go to a second owner that we don't know for sure exactly what that second owner is going to do with that property. And in fact, if it is a surface parking lot, I don't think that fits with our downtown in focus plan. So if you could talk through that a little bit.
I mean, I think, you know, what we're doing here is we're kind of moving a surface parking lot from 4th Avenue to 3rd Avenue. And American Federal Bank, I think that the feedback I've gotten from them is that they will not sell their surface parking because they need it for their building. And if they can't replace it, they won't sell it. And they're not unlike RDO when we first started talking to them about coming downtown. Unless we own the parking, we're not, you know, going to participate in your project. We've sort of had that feedback from other large building developers downtown. They're just not willing to give up some adjacent surface parking. American Federal asked, would you sell us the police building? We can knock that down instead and have surface parking right next door. And I don't think we're looking for that as a standalone project. And they've been interested in just buying the health building and using it for parking. But I guess the reason I see this project fitting with the downtown plan is that it brings in housing, which is an important part of the plan. It brings in another hotel that's going to be active commercial space, and it eliminates a parking lot at 4th Avenue and 4th Street. Now, down the road, we don't know if will that surface parking lot at Third Avenue and Fourth Street be there for, 50 years. It could be, or possibly it gets sold and redeveloped by someone else in the future, so.
Yeah, and certainly this project is wonderful. I would hate for it not to happen. But I'm wondering if there's another alternative to that surface parking lot, or that piece of property turning into a surface parking lot, and whether it fits within Focus Plan. That's the other question.
I mean, I think the American Federal just was insistent, when I had talked to them about, would you sell it otherwise? And no, and I don't know if you've gotten any different answer, but if we don't do the trade, this project doesn't happen. And so there's a great project, but then we have sort of the downside is we have a surface parking lot where, if we don't do the project, American Federal will likely keep their surface parking lot. It'll be difficult, we could probably get a smaller project done on this site, and maybe the True Green site will develop into another small project.
Yeah, and I'll add in, that's how our option agreement with
We have Prakash first, and then.
Oh, sorry. That's how our option agreement with the bank is outlined, that in order for them to sell us the property, we need to give them the replacement property adjacent to their site.
And then the mayor, to you.
I have three minor questions. One is somewhat similar to Commissioner's question. I think, how did you come to the conclusion of having this combination of apartment and hotel? Is that because were you trying to fill in the space? Or did you do any market study to decide as to is that based on need that you come to that conclusion? That's the first part of the question, then I'll ask the second.
Yeah, so the AC brand, while it's somewhat of a custom hotel brand with prototypical room types, they've got some metrics of how that property performs best, and right at that low 100s, that 105 to 130 rooms is one of the places where that hotel brand, based on the services it offers, finds its efficiency. And as far as when we're developing that combination of space together with the mix of uses provides that activity that we like to see within our developments. And it's something that we combine in a lot of our developments throughout the Midwest. We combine the multifamily housing with the hotel uses, and it provides a nice synergy and active atmosphere at all times of the day.
May I?
Follow up, yes.
Amenities-wise, I know, is there any restaurant within the hotel?
Yes, so one of the AC requirements is a food and beverage program. We haven't determined yet if it would be a separately branded restaurant that would have its own name. That's the way we generally focus, but until we are kind of secured in a project, we don't start contracting restaurant consultants that start to build up those brands in that menu and program.
And did you have a part three?
The final three is to do with the parking. The number, where did you come up with this number? When I look at the number 108 and plus 115, and you want the parking 167.
Yeah.
So where did you come to that number?
Yeah, so purely that number comes from what we can fit on the site. It's a dense site with a lot of uses on it, and that's what we were able to fit within the program. What we would propose is we would put residential users as kind of the primary user of the parking on site, since the hospitality is so much of a cycle and a daily turnover. We would likely look to use city facilities for valet parking at adjacent parking facilities throughout the community.
Mayor, did you have a question?
So Mercantile has a ramp right next to it, so the public could do the Mercantile ramp for us. That works really well. I think what your net on parking is that you go from a bigger parking lot to a smaller parking lot, don't you? When we tear down the public health building, you're not going to be able to put the same amount of parking spots on that you presently have on your site?
On that site right now, the American Federal, I think it's plus 2 stalls that we actually would have at the public health space. So they're almost identical in size. There's only about 1,000 square foot difference, and that's really just on how it gets laid out and how those corners.
So where the city struggles on this is we want residential downtown. Arlette and I both know there's going to be 5,000 people that move in the downtown area. So your residential is very important to us. At the same time, if people have conventions and stuff, they want more hotels as well. So you've got a couple of good hotels, Jasper, and you have the Radisson. This would add to that. And then you have a space for 300 people, so some people would think that then you could have issues. Secondary part of that, if you do a performing arts downtown that holds 2,000 people, it really helps to have the hotels in the downtown district area and helps that. The struggle we go as commissioners is because our in focus was just saying get rid of parking lots. So that's, you know, you look at the project, it looks great, but you almost get a little nervous because again, we got another parking lot. And we're both a little bit on that. We don't know what'll happen in 5-10 years. American Federal might do something different, and Jim would probably know that, what happens in time. You know, some things change as time goes on. But your project is excellent. It's really a nice infill project for that area, and it would be fantastic to have that in the community. Just, I like the concept when you're talking, it's a hotel and a residential, but it seems those cultures mix sometimes. You got a place to eat, you got to go to a place to sit down, you got amenities in the area, so it's an activated space. And truly in the city, we need activated spaces, so it's more like a downtown experience. So I like the project. You only needed a 13-year TIF, is that correct?
I
Please, that's what it says, Jim, in mine.
Yeah, that's what I estimated it would be, is that for the amount they're suggesting that, you know, it would be a 13-year term and then it would cap out. You could, you know, one of the options the city might have is you stretch it to 15, but then the city starts to take some of the money earlier on and gives them money a little bit later. So that's an option we could look at to get money for affordable housing.
Yeah, we approach TIF as filling the gap between what an appraised valuation would be and the construction cost. So we really look at it from a number standpoint rather than the time period.
Just
the other factor consider on parking is that the second proposal, and this isn't to be critical of it, but that also is just going to have surface parking on the health building site. It's just it'll be enclosed rather than outside.
For the in-focus plan, what is the primary objective of that? I know there may be other objectives after, but in a priority level, was it strictly removing parking lot? Or because heard somewhere else we talked about affordable housing and a couple other. So is there a priority level of the in-focus plan? It might not meet all of them, but does it meet the top tier priorities of the plan?
You want to answer that?
there were so many facets of that plan that it's hard to define what was top.
Was that, because I think it would be hard to check all the boxes, you know, like you gotta.
It's
I don't
checked a
know.
lot of, well, you know, it's walkability and so many other things.
And maybe if I could also add to that, I mean, the discussion for the Performing Arts Center has been on the corner, kitty corner from this lot. And the intent, partially, of looking at that piece of property for the Performing Arts Center was that there's a possibility of development right across the street from it. So, you know, it goes beyond the priorities even perhaps of the in-focus plan. I guess, you know, my question here is, and Jim and I have talked about this, and I know that it's been probably some difficulties in the process, but there's got to be some other options. And is it, could we bring something in regards to a parking ramp to that conversation so that we have covered all of our bases? It just, you know, again, we're gonna move towards a missing tooth, which we have been trying to get away from in downtown. And I just want to hear that every single option has been discussed.
I mean, if we had you know, an unlimited budget, we'd probably turn down the police station, build another parking ramp there, and then we could develop this site and have a skyway across, but we don't have an unlimited budget. Not to say that that couldn't be the plan 30 years down the road, is to build more structured parking. I just find in a downtown like ours, if you don't stack up the parking, people tear down buildings and use surface parking, because when tenants are looking for office space and Jim Booth is showing them around, parking is one of the questions he ends up calling me on. Let's say I've got a tenant that needs 80 parking spaces. Do you have 80 parking spaces?
The question that I have, MBA development is also
Yeah, no,
looking at, now, are they looking at the other piece of property, or are they looking at this same option?
They're looking at this same option. They would have primarily interior parking and some exterior parking along the alley. But yeah, there's strictly on this site. Now, they've floated the idea to me, could we still build our project and you tear down the police station instead and sell that to American Federal? Or would you let us build on the police station if you pick this other proposal? And so, those are just some other ideas out there, and there's probably no perfect solution here, and so we have to pick one that'll work.
Go ahead,
Just for
Mayor.
the public, we have an engagement center at the police station right now. So the engagement center, there's been talk about perhaps building a new engagement center, and then it would be appropriate that we could look at the sale of the fire department. But right now, it's a high priority for the city to have the engagement center, and we would not entertain selling it probably for several years until whatever new comes along as an engagement center. But planning is looking at that engagement center with a group right now over by where the ABC bookstore is. So there's a little bit of that. So I wouldn't put it high in there that we'll sell the police department right now.
Don't tear it down yet. Okay. Any other questions of Luke, Heather, and the group? Did I get your name right?
Yeah, I'm Luke. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is a follow-up
Thank you.
Is a follow-up meeting. We'll meet again, I guess, a week from today at 1 o'clock. I hope that works for everyone's schedules. We'll hear the two proposals that we didn't hear. We'll certainly record them again, and so if you missed the meeting, and then so just want to get your thoughts on, after that, we'll try to get another meeting when most people can attend. And my thought was that the two committees together would make a recommendation, but there was some discussion at the last meeting about meeting separately and making separate recommendations. And so if you have any thoughts on that, we can talk about that at the next meeting.
Okay. And Renaissance will meet the following morning then, 26th, right?
We're going to cancel that.
You are?
Yeah.
Okay. Going to delay. All right. Thank you, everyone.